Hi, everybody. Welcome to our discussion on Ukraine and what Spirit of America is doing to save lives and help Ukraine win. I am Jim Hake. I'm the founder and chief executive officer at Spirit of America. And I'm very, very happy to see so many of our supporters, including members of our board on the call today. Matt and Colleen and I and all of us at Spirit of America really want to thank you for letting us talk with you today and for the support that lets us do the work that you're going to hear about. As background, Spirit of America is a privately funded nonprofit. This is our 20th anniversary. So this year is our 20th anniversary. So for 20 years, we've been working alongside US troops and diplomats all over the world to help them save and improve lives, help them defend freedom, and strengthen the front lines of democracy. And we do that by providing private assistance that essentially fills the gaps between what needs to be done and what government can do. We're the only organization that has an agreement with the Department of Defense that allows the US military to work with us to identify needs, receive and distribute assistance, and provide logistical support. We're the only one. And right now our team is active in Taiwan, West Africa, and the Middle East, as well as Ukraine, of course. And we've been active in Ukraine, helping Ukraine defend its freedom since 2014. So for 9 years now. And since the war began last year, our focus has been on providing non-lethal assistance to help Ukraine's soldiers. And early in the war, we provided hundreds of tons of non-lethal assistance. We provided enough bulletproof vests, ballistic helmets, and first aid kits to equip the equivalent of every US Navy SEAL, every Army Ranger, and every Marine Special Operator. And more recently, we're investing in capabilities that have an asymmetric impact, an off-scale impact on helping Ukraine win. And I'd like to tell you what's really inspiring our work right now. In the last 2 weeks in August, Colleen and Matt and I had extensive meetings with the US and Ukrainian military in Germany, Poland, and Ukraine. And going into those meetings, we've been providing support since February of 2022 for the overall war effort there. But going into those meetings, I had one big question, and that was, could assistance from Spirit of America change the outcome of the war? I knew that any dollar we spent would be put to very good use based on how we operate. But the question was, could we be the difference that makes a difference in Ukraine? And the answer that I learned was yes. It is possible for private assistance for citizens like all of us to affect the outcome of the war in Ukraine. So our goal is to raise $200 million to provide that assistance. And since the war began last year, we've raised $66 million from American citizens to help Ukraine win. And 26 million of that has been in the last few weeks. So Matt, Dimmick, and Colleen will tell you about some of the ways those funds have been put to work and how they're making an extraordinary difference. Matt will go first. He is a retired Army colonel. His last assignment was as Russia director on the National Security Council from 2019 to 2021. And in that capacity, he served as the president's principal advisor on Russia. And he's the Ukraine lead on our field team. Colleen is also a veteran who has been with us for nearly 5 years now and serves as our regional director for Europe. And we are very, very lucky to have both of them as part of our team. So a little housekeeping. If you have questions today, please submit them through the Q&A button on your Zoom toolbar. I'll moderate and do my best to get to all of them. And also at the end, I have a question for all of you that I hope to hear back from you on, but we'll wait for that. So with that, Matt, over to you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I think if everyone wants to know whether private funding through Spirit of America can make a difference in Ukraine, I just want to lead off by saying that we have been on the ground floor of a project that is already having ultra high payoff results on the battlefield today. And I'll get to why that's the case. But the bottom line up front is that a Spirit of America contribution of equipment worth a little over $600,000 towards this particular project created the conditions for Ukraine to destroy over $3.1 billion of high value Russian hardware. And that that number is growing by the day. And that's a billion with a B. And from everything we have learned about it, we know that helping the Ukrainians bring it to scale across the entirety of their force will cause those Russian losses to grow and multiply in ways that will dramatically strengthen Ukraine's edge over Russia. So the basic premise is the U.S. has finally developed a command, control, and communications architecture that allows the U.S. military to interact fluidly with partners in the field, like Ukraine, who do not operate on our classified networks. Without it, there's just an enormous firewall in intelligence and information sharing. But with it, the U.S. has basically a digital pipeline for instantaneously sharing any part of our vast pool of intelligence data and analysis in ways that are absolutely crucial to our partner troops on the ground, who just can't wait for tactical intelligence to go through the cumbersome transfer processes that currently exist. However, this vast technical system is completely worthless without the basic hardware to make it work, like laptops, tablets, and commercial smartphones that troops in the field need to make it work. And surprisingly, these tools are outside the reach of our military procurement officials for a number of reasons. For the Ukrainians, it's simply a matter of being completely tapped for resources. But for the U.S., it really comes down to just a lack of reliable funding in many cases for these kinds of purchases and the excruciatingly long lead times it takes to procure such non-standard items. The U.S. military is not built to go buy these things off the shelf, and it's incredibly hard to get the systems in the right place to do it, and it takes months and months, in some cases years. So earlier this year, the U.S. set out to advise the Ukrainians on how to bring some order to their disaggregated command and control system using this tactical network as the essential organizing tool. Now, the central component to that plan required fielding tactical network devices to an entire corps at the spearhead of the counteroffensive, and using that nucleus to showcase the power of the network when employed in a holistic and focused way. And the intent was to demonstrate through this core how linking all the current special operations users and conventional units together within this network, how that could pack an enormous punch that was going to be vastly greater than the sum of all the parts. But as I described earlier, there's just no way to fulfill this mission without the hardware, and that was completely out of the reach of our U.S. colleagues. So they turned to us at Spirit of America to fill that gap and purchase the needed devices to get the system deployed. And that's exactly what we did. We purchased the necessary variety of about 300 devices and peripheral equipment in just a few short weeks, and breathed life into the system in time for the Ukrainians to employ it with the unimaginable results I mentioned earlier. And frankly, without those essential items, the whole project would never have gotten off the ground until likely next year, if ever. So needless to say, from the numbers I provided earlier, this experiment has been an unmitigated success in every possible category. Where this network's been fielded, it allows the Ukrainians to do a number of superhuman things that magnify their combat potential. They can digitize battlefield information from multiple sources to synthesize a near perfect picture of where every enemy asset is sitting at any particular moment. Then they can seamlessly exchange that information across different units with anyone that has access to the network. They can fly their reconnaissance drones safely around known air defense and jamming systems to loiter deep inside Russian lines. They can then confirm the precise locations of the equipment that they're targeting in real time. And then they can call in any unit that has the long-range precision systems available and that's in range to strike that target. All of that is happening right now in minutes. They complete that entire cycle, and they can do all of it in absolute security. And once more units get trained and equipped with network systems like this, there will not be a single square meter of occupied territory where the Russians are not at risk every minute of every day. So in light of those incredible results that this tactical network produces, the US and Ukraine are now scrambling to proliferate the deployment of these systems to every operational task force headquarters, every corps command, and an additional 81 brigades across the breadth of the entire front. But under current procurement restrictions, as I detailed before, that task is impossible without private help in getting the devices that they need. But with more Spirit of America support to supply enough quantities of devices, which we estimate to be in the range of about 4,000 to 5,000, they can get moving on training and provisioning all of the Ukrainian units instead of waiting for U.S. government funding that very likely just may never come. So we share the belief with our partners that once the tactical network is fielded throughout the majority of the Ukrainian armed forces, the pace of precisely targeted operations against Russian forces will inevitably accelerate and could make the difference in Ukraine's ability to win the war. Persistent depletion of these high-value targets at that kind of scale throughout the entirety of southeastern Ukraine it could produce a collapse in Russia's ability to sustain its forces in the field. And Spirit of America's support in this area really could be the difference that makes the difference. But it requires us to gather the resources we need to make this happen at the scale that it's needed. So with that, I'll pass it off to Colleen.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, everyone.
I'm sorry, could I jump in just for 1 second before you go? One thing I want to emphasize with what Matt said, the $3.1 billion of Russian weapon systems that have been eliminated, the only purpose of those systems is to kill Ukrainians. So when those are eliminated, the dollar amount is staggering, but there have been thousands and thousands of lives saved because those weapon systems no longer exist. So thank you, Matt. I just wanted to emphasize that for everyone. Colleen, over to you. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Jim. And thank you, everyone, for joining today to keep checking in on our updates. So besides supporting the Ukraine Tactical Network, a second major line of effort that we have been focusing on is to provide support to elite Ukrainian units. And we've been doing this because of our model, because we work directly alongside deployed US military to be able to feed millions of dollars worth of aid directly to Ukrainian units that move the needle towards Ukrainian victory. So what do we mean by saying move the needle? Well, we mean units that have outsized importance and impact in the battle space. And they have this because of their level of training, mostly from US and NATO partners, because of the missions that they're tasked with, because of how close they are in the chain to the highest levels of the Ukrainian armed forces, and because of the locations in which they are deployed and operating. So, for example, one of these units that we're supporting, they've been aggressively going after targets in occupied Crimea and 50 to 100 kilometers behind the front lines as a part of a broader effort to hit Russian logistics, fuel, maintenance, and command centers in order to disrupt the Russian ability to supply their frontline units. So we've provided them with Ukraine Tactical Network phones and tablets, like Matt just described. We've provided them with reconnaissance drones, pictured here, with vehicles, with night vision goggles, with thermal mitigating gear. That's gear that protects a soldier by wearing a poncho or by staying in a tent. It protects them from being detected by a Russian thermal drone overhead. We've provided medical gear, really everything that we can give them that will help increase their chance of surviving and achieving success in their missions. A second elite unit that we've supported, they're currently now deep behind enemy lines, and we've outfitted them with reconnaissance gear, with backpacks, rangefinders, binoculars, drones, radios to enable them to safely do their highly risky but highly important reconnaissance operations. So what's next? We've spent the last 2 weeks on the ground meeting with US military and Ukrainian partners, and we feel that we have a good idea of what Spirit of America can provide to support these elite units. It's thousands more sets of thermal mitigating gear, not just shifting from the summer and autumn colors, but also to the winter camouflage pattern. They also need several hundred pairs of night vision goggles. Now that it's winter here in Eastern Europe, it's about 15 hours of darkness per day. So the ability to see while it's dark is incredibly crucial. They also need drones and also counter-drone equipment. Pictured here is a DJI Mavic drone, which is one of the most common drones that we've provided. And we'll talk more about that here shortly. But meeting with the Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force, they reiterated to us that despite U.S. government funding for Ukraine, the, quote, smaller, more bespoke needs like Ukraine Tactical Network devices or commercial drones just aren't making it through to these elite units. And he told us that Spirit of America is the only way we are ever certain that the needed aid gets to our Ukrainian Special Operations Forces partners, end quote. So why drones? Well, to overcome the positional nature of hostilities, the Ukrainians need to fight smarter and more efficiently than the Russians. And this is especially true in the unmanned aerial systems and the electronic warfare space. Simply put, drones have redefined warfare. The Ukrainians have started an initiative to establish the Army of Drones, which is a goal to recruit and train 10,000 new drone pilots. While we met with the commander of the Territorial Defense Forces and the deputy commander of the Territorial Defense Forces, they shared with us that President Zelensky and the Deputy Prime Minister Fedorov tasked them with this training project. And it's due to their proven track record of developing training programs that are modern and match the real battlefield needs. And how did they build this track record? Well, it all started with Spirit of America investing and establishing the company commander's course last autumn with them. That course has yielded such incredible results. The captains coming out of it are doing so well on the battlefield that President Zelensky and Deputy Prime Minister Fedorov have tasked the Territorial Defense Force with training the new Army of Drones. So Spirit of America continues to be at the forefront of us helping establish and pilot ways to help the Ukrainians gather asymmetric impact. To date, we've provided over 200 drones. All of these drones have gone to elite units that have dedicated UAV battalions. So this means that not only do the battalions have highly skilled pilots, but also the battalion commanders understand how to incorporate unmanned aerial vehicles into their planning and how to exploit their capabilities during their operations. So the Ukrainian units that we're providing drones to are primarily using the Spirit of America drones for reconnaissance, to not only map out their own movements, but also to locate Russian positions. And they're also used to visually confirm information that's being shared over the Ukraine tactical network about high-value Russian equipment positions. And that is helping lead to that $3.1 billion figure. So U.S. Special Forces even shared with us how one Spirit of America drone was used to locate and recover the body of a fallen Ukrainian Special Operations Forces soldier. So the drones are truly being flown constantly and being used in a variety of ways. The drones that we've provided are commercial off-the-shelf drones that you saw pictured, so DJI Mavics, Autel Evo Max drones. And we outfit them with night vision capability as well, so they're helpful at night. So what else is next? We're continuing to work with U.S. Special Forces to provide the drone and counter-drone needs that elite Ukrainian units need. When we talk about counter-drones, what we mean is this is equipment that jams Russian drones by emitting strong electromagnetic pulses on frequencies that are commonly used by Russian operators. So this means that a Russian drone that is inbound or flying overhead becomes immediately paralyzed, falls out of the sky, and is taken out of operation. So the government of Ukraine has prioritized getting counter unmanned aerial system equipment into the country, and the U.S. Special Forces have confirmed that need to us as a huge priority need so that it can keep Ukrainian special operations teams alive. This is life-saving equipment, and it can also enable them to asymmetrically fight smarter. We also learned about the need for specific drone parts. So for example, if a drone has a piece that's broken, it's a $100 piece that can bring the entire $25,000 drone offline. So we're working with the Special Forces to begin to provide common broken parts for drones so that a $100 investment can have a return on investment of a $25,000 drone coming back to life, being fully mission capable. So we're continuing to invest in the smartest, most efficient ways possible to enable and enhance elite unit capabilities. So I will pause there and send it back over to Jim. Thank you.
So please submit any questions on the Q&A via the Q&A button on your toolbar there. We have a few. So first one, Colleen, back to you. What is the expected lifetime of a reconnaissance drone that we're providing, that Spirit of America is providing?
Sure. Equipment attrition is definitely a constant problem. In the winter, also, the drones have a shorter lifespan because the batteries in the cold air have a shorter life. So some drones can last a matter of days, others can fly for weeks and months at a time. An interesting feedback that we received, though, because of the Ukraine tactical network, which Matt described, they're able to better understand where Russians are placing their electronic warfare equipment. So where they're placing their they're drone jammers. So Ukrainian pilots are now able to fly their drones and navigate them around all this electronic warfare. And this has dramatically increased the lifespan of Ukrainian drones.
Great, thank you. And Matt, this one for you. How susceptible is the new non-firewalled tactical command and control network to eavesdropping by Russians?
Yeah, this is the incredible thing about this system that we learned even more about during this past trip, and that is that this architecture that the U.S. has supplied that enables the tactical network is built with the most highly effective and proficient encryption and security, and it's backed by the full weight of the U.S. government with all of the protection that we can purchase and employ. And there was basically these systems are so far impervious to Russian interference and Russian meddling and Russian cyber attacks. And even as recently as a few weeks ago, we were told that the Russians, because they know of these kinds of systems and how valuable they are and how effective they are, they're deliberately targeting them. But their attempts to target the Ukraine tactical network have so far been have fallen completely flat. And they mounted one of their most intense cyber attacks just within the past couple of weeks, which they estimated to be in terms of millions and millions and millions of attacks to try to bring the system down. And the Ukraine tactical network not only survived it, but basically the Russian attacks just bounced off of it. So the U.S. is supremely confident in the security of the system and the ability of the Ukrainians to communicate within that system and the strength of that system against Russia's attacks to bring it down. And it's proven itself in the field as well.
Thanks, Matt. Next question is, Spirit America supporting Ukraine's military. What about humanitarian principles and the idea of do no harm? So I'll take a crack at that, and then Matt, you or Colleen can jump in. So Spirit America is providing non-lethal assistance. We do not provide weapons, guns, ammo, anything like that. The drones that Colleen talked about are drones with cameras. They're for surveillance purposes, all of which are helping to protect Ukrainian forces. The overlay is that Ukraine is under attack, and everything Ukraine is doing is to defend its people and its country and defend its innocence as well as its freedom and democracy. So our view, and this is maybe not the conventional view, conventional definition of humanitarian, but our view is that the most humanitarian thing that we can do, that really anyone could do, is to do things that stop the suffering at its source. And there's one source of that suffering in Ukraine, and it is the Russian Federation and its attack on both Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian innocents. So we are, the things we're doing, the weapon systems that Matt talked about that no longer exist in Ukraine, those have saved thousands of lives. And that is a pretty good definition of humanitarian. So that's where we are with it. There are, in the field of drones, for example, there are drones that carry munitions, and we don't provide those. Those are being created in many cases by civil society organizations inside Ukraine. We're not involved in that, but we are with the attacks on Ukraine today. We think it's really impossible to somehow be above the fray. What's happening? There are war crimes. There's kidnapping of children on an industrial scale, and it's incumbent upon all of us to do everything we can to stop that. Colleen, Matt, anything you want to add? Okay, next question is, how do you deconflict, make sure that government isn't doing what you are?
Sure, I'll take a stab at this one. Because of our unique relationship with the U.S. military, because of our worldwide memorandum of understanding signed with the U.S. Department of Defense, we truly are the only NGO that has a seat at the table with the U.S. military and at the headquarters, the Security Assistance Group for Ukraine. the headquarters that is coordinating not just American aid going into Ukraine, but all coalition and partner force aid into Ukraine. They have stated, and we are constantly in contact with them about how they are prioritizing their aid, and it's lethal aid, of course. So non-lethal aid naturally falls to the bottom of their list. And so by constantly communicating with the Security Assistance Group for Ukraine in Germany, as well as the US Special Forces teams that are scattered throughout Eastern Ukraine. We have the tactical picture from the US Special Forces teams and the command picture from the Security Assistance Group for Ukraine. So we are confident that we are not trying to compete or go up against Uncle Sam's wallet. Everything we're doing is curated and tailored specifically for the elite units, or is a program that the U.S. Understands is incredibly impactful, like the tactical network, but they cannot provide the necessary equipment for it fast enough. So when U.S. funding eventually comes online, maybe 6 months from now, maybe 10 months from now, when it comes online to support the device needs for Ukraine Tactical Network, we will no longer be providing them. We will have already shifted to do something else experimental and see what the next huge return on investment project is that we can do for our country and for the Ukrainians.
That's great. Thank you, Colleen. So we have 4 minutes left, so I'm going to take a moment to ask a question of you all. And it's something that I would really like your feedback on after today's briefing, and I'll share my email address before the Zoom call is over. So I spend a lot of time talking with people about what is at stake with the war in Ukraine. And so I'd appreciate your feedback on something I'm thinking about in terms of how to help people understand what's at stake more quickly, basically. And our view, of course, it's not just our view, but that Russia's war on Ukraine is the greatest threat to freedom and democracy since World War II. And we are going to live, whatever the outcome is, we're going to live with the consequences for generations. So to help people understand that, I think what we need to do is focus more on Russia. Part of what we talk about is it's not just about Ukraine. Well, if it's not just about Ukraine, what's it about? And so I think we need to focus more on Russia. And when you look around the world, just about every threat to peace, to freedom, and to democracy, every threat in the world today to those things is somehow linked to Russia. Iran destabilizing the Middle East, Russia. Disinformation that undermines democracy in Europe and the United States, Russia. Coups in Africa, Russia. Supporting Hamas, Russia. Yeah, I could keep going on with China, Syria, North Korea, but you get the idea. And those are just facts. That is all happening. It's not my opinion or our opinion. That is happening. There's extensive proof for all those things. And all those things will get worse if Russia wins in Ukraine. So and this is where with all this, I'd like your feedback after today or after this briefing. So to understand what's at stake, I think people should ask, what would the world look like today if we had lost World War II? What kind of world would we be living in? Now, it's hard to conceive of that because, my growing up, really everyone on the Zoom call growing up has lived in a world of relative peace, tremendous prosperity, stability. Of course, things have happened, but we've been very fortunate. But what kind of world would we be living in if we had lost World War II? Because that's the kind of world we can expect to live in if Russia wins in Ukraine. And when you think about that, you say, well, what made the difference in World War II? And what made the difference then was that Americans, like all of us, came together and did their part. Some things were extraordinarily heroic. The vast majority of things were individual Americans just doing what was in front of them and doing their part. So the idea is, then united we did, and today united we can. So I would really appreciate your feedback on my thinking about this. Is there something to it? Is it a stinker? You know, please let me know. And you can email me, Jim Hake at spiritofamerica.org. That's JIMHAKE, spiritofamerica.org. Or email anybody else you know at Spirit of America, and it'll find its way to me. So I really would like your feedback on it, because having people understand what is at stake is critical for freedom and democracy to prevail in our time ahead. So thank you. Thank you for your support. We have Thanksgiving coming up next week. That is truly proven to be the world's greatest holiday. And I hope you all and your families and your loved ones enjoy it. So thank you for being with us today, and we'll talk to you again soon.